Welcome back to Auto Day at Global Supply Chain Week, FreightWaves week-long look at the global supply chain. My name is Kevin Hill. I'm the executive publisher here at FreightWaves, and our next fireside chat will be an exciting one with Daniel Burrows, a founder and CEO of TruckLabs. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, and it's great to be part of Auto Day here.
Yeah, and TruckLabs is a trucking technology company that produces aerodynamic structures, wings. Your first product here is truck wings. Can you give us a little bit of background about TruckLabs and what you guys do?
Yeah, so their wings the first product is called Truck Wings, and they don't make the truck fly, but they do save a lot of fuel. So if you think about the truck, a Class 8 truck, you've got the tractor and the trailer, and you've got a gap between the two. And in that gap, it causes a lot of air turbulence and slows the truck down. So what we have is these panels that fold out. We call them the wings, and they recover more like a bullet train look for your Class 8 truck. And then when you slow down and you might want to turn, and if you turn, you'd hit them, they fold in so they're flat against the back of the cab, saving you fuel on the highway, but on the when you're driving slower, it just stays out of the way, so they're there when you want them and not there when you don't.
I guess that's good news for all fleets out there. So Daniel, I see your background is as a consultant with Oliver Wyman, and then with venture capital and Horsley Bridge Partners. How did you get started making wings for trucks?
Well, went back to I was on a road trip with some friends, and we all studied physics together, and so we were looking at trucks, and it was a long drive, and so we were looking at how can you make it better as a like past hours, and so we were thinking, what about improving the aerodynamics of trucks? And we looked at we were talking about the skirts at the bottom and the back of the trailer. There was this thing called the trailer tail out there, which was improving the back of the trailer. There was nothing for the tractor trailer gap. And so I patented this idea back in 2010. And then, I went through various other things at work. And then I was doing some graduate work at Stanford and revisited this idea, and I kept looking for the reason why not to do it. Market wasn't going to be big enough, or couldn't be done mechanically, or whatever. I couldn't find any good reason why not to do it. So I took my student loans and hired two mechanical engineers from Davis, and paid them, and we started out of a garage in Silicon Valley, and we built our first prototype, put it out on a truck, and it worked, and we saw the fuel savings, and we've gone on. That was 2015, and we've gone on, and now we've done 200 million miles. But it all started with us in the garage trying to make a truck better.
You find that with a lot of entrepreneurial stories, the garage certainly, but there's a million reasons not to do something. But that one reason is often it just makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend who said, don't do a startup or don't start a company unless you just feel in your heart that like there's no way that thing shouldn't exist. And that's the way I felt about this tractor trailer gap. It's about 5% of fuel burn is in that gap. And so as the US, we spend $100 billion a year on diesel for these Class 8 trucks. It's about 8% of all our carbon emissions. And I just felt like in 5 years' time, there's no chance that product shouldn't exist, and why shouldn't I do it? So it was like, if you close your eyes, is it going to be there? Yes, I think it's going to be there. So I was like, I'm gonna try and do my bit to make it happen. And it's been a complicated journey. We've had to figure out pneumatics and electronic controls. They're all now telematically controlled, so we have our software side of it, and there's been a lot of pieces to figure out along the way. But we now feel like we have a shot at that idea that we had in that road trip coming to life.
So on the opening of Global Supply Chain Week, the first open Monday morning, Dooner came out with, do the math, solve the problem. It's kind of as simple as that. It's not easy, but it's as simple as that. You do the math, you attack the problem. Once the math is done, the problem is usually solved in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's what's really important for our first product, the truck wings, is the total cost of ownership. So what does it cost to build, to buy, and what does it cost to maintain it? And you add that all together, and what are the fuel savings? And if you can get that, to be 12 to 15 to 18 months of costs, and that the truck fleet's then ahead, that makes for a great product that our customers are very happy with. And now we've got 200 million miles of data proving the maintenance-free operation, and we've got a lot of great customers that are growing with the truck wings and being successful for them. And so we're really proud of that. And now that gives us the basis to start launching some of our other efficiency products for fleets as well.
So when you talk about fuel savings, so there's the direct cost of savings of fuel, right? That's the obvious improvement for fleets and for shippers, people who ship goods, right? It helps the entire supply chain. What are some of the other benefits that improves or makes a supply chain a little bit more efficient with better fuel efficiencies and aerodynamics?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things. One is it also increases the stability of trucks, which does have a safety aspect, which is important. But I think more generally, what we're doing with this is every one of the truck wings comes with a data box, and then it's always the fleet's data, but we can start giving the fleet more insight into how their own trucks are operating, and what their costs are, and what's driving their costs. So what we're building at TruckLabs is a fuel economy model of the weather, the terrain, the driver skill, the all the different pieces that would drive your cost. And then when you're looking at pricing a load across the US, or you're deciding which loads that your truck fleet should pick up, you can actually figure out what the true marginal cost of that load is, and that helps drive efficiency. So you can, for example, say, we fast forward and we've got a lot more electric trucks out there. Some routes would be much better for electric trucks than others. So you can deploy the right assets onto the right routes. Today, a lot of our fleet are natural gas, and so they have advantages and disadvantages over diesel. And so you can deploy the right assets for the right jobs using the cost model.
You bring up a good point. Natural gas, diesel. We have new technologies that we've been talking about all day here on Auto Day, and we'll continue talking about that throughout the day, is electric, hydrogen, to name two of the most popular or noteworthy alternative fuels right now. Natural gas, you can certainly lump into that as well as probably the granddaddy of alternative fuels to diesel. Aerodynamics is really agnostic to what kind of energy you're using to move a big rig, because aerodynamics saves energy no matter what you're using, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that old school aerodynamics plays an increasingly important role in an alternative fuel future, where with electric, it's about range extension and the weight of your battery, and your speed of recharging, right? Whereas diesel, it's a very concentrated energy source, right? When you pump in that diesel in, it's pretty quick to pump in, and you've got a lot of energy stored in the liquid. So it is less sensitive to those things. With diesel, it's more about, oh, you're burning 5% less diesel. That's a cost per mile reduction. So the value proposition actually changes slightly with the different types of fuels. But I think it's no chance that no wonder that all OEMs, and particularly the alternative fuel OEMs, are really focused a lot on the drag coefficients and how they can make their truck as smooth as possible for the air. Because it doesn't matter what's propelling you. 2/3 of your fuel source, whatever it is, goes on overcoming aerodynamic drag, not rolling resistance. So aero is important today and increasingly important tomorrow.
So it's 2/3.
Yeah,
Two-thirds is on drag.
yeah, yeah. When you're at highway speeds, right? So if you imagine when you're driving, it's the old Newtonian laws of motion. Once that big 80,000 pound rig is going, it wants to keep going, right? The only thing that's really slowing it down is the air. And so it's really a game of that air resistance. And as air resistance is pretty significant when you're 65, 70 miles an hour out there. And so two-thirds of your fuel is spent overcoming that drag rather than anything else.
Yeah, so you make products for fuel efficiency of fleets to make supply chains a little bit more efficient, especially on the transportation side. But you're also an auto supplier as well. You know, auto parts supplier, auto design. Tell us a little bit about your sales and distribution. Is it more fleet sales that you do, kind of aftermarket products, or OEMs?
Yeah, so you can buy the truck wings uh, directly from us if you're, if you're running a fleet of trucks, or you can buy them and have them installed at what's called the PDI or the Mod Center. We have agreements with several of them so that you can have it delivered with your new truck. You can have it financed into your new truck. So one of the things that's really important is this has about a 12 to 18 month payback period on the truck wings, right? But if you buy it with your new truck and put that cost into the purchase of a new truck, you can actually be ahead from day one, kind of like a Solar City model, but for trucking. So that's sort of one thing that's been very attractive to some of our customers is that they know they can actually be in the money, so to speak, from day one of driving.
So can you describe your supply chain a little bit as well, right? You're procuring raw materials, you're manufacturing, you're designing, you're delivering and distribution. How has, I guess, how has the last year been with the disruption that we've seen with COVID-19?
Yeah. Um, So there's a lot of different parts that go into truck wings, right? So you've got aluminum formed parts, you've got a pneumatic system with an air control box. You've also got harnesses and electronics box, and then you've got these glass reinforced polypropylene panels, right? So these composite panels as well. So it's a complicated supply chain and one that we've done a lot of work on because we're growing rapidly. So we try and partner with people who are experts in each one of those things and then kind of put it all together as our product. So we have a large number of different suppliers, and a lot of them based in the US, some of them based internationally. And COVID's been very disruptive. I mean, I think uh, you saw when it first hit, different areas shutting down at different rates. So we had some manufacturing in Mexico, and they were potentially on a different stage of the outbreak than our plants in the US. And so when you do just-in-time manufacturing and you have a dislocation like that, you can end up with a real problem. So it really made us reevaluate how we looked at our supply chain and looked at risk in our supply chain, in particular of regional outbreaks of COVID or other things that could selectively turn on and off different sections and therefore have an impact on the whole. So you've got to test the resilience of your supply chain to kind of a new paradigm here, which is that what happens if one country's production gets turned off or cross-border traffic becomes impossible for a period of time, and that adds a lot of cost and complexity to the supply chain. I think we're still trying to figure out how to optimize for that.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. I remember back in April and May of 2020, the auto manufacturers, U.S. auto manufacturers were ready to come back online, but Mexico, as you said, what they weren't ready. That they still had 2 or 3 weeks, and you have a very efficient supply chain and movement of parts being in different stages of production in the auto auto truck machinery type of industries, right? So you did see that. I mean, just in time is great, except when you have this dislocation of production and timing of production. And for someone who, I was a freight broker moving a lot of goods in and out of Mexico, most of that was for the auto industry, is very tight timelines and very tight production schedules between U.S., Mexico, and Canada as well.
Yeah, and I think that there has been a lot of discussion around that, right? And then also, I think regulators and governments on both sides and health officials realized that that we needed to coordinate across the border because these borders are artificial lines in the sand, but then when you've got a production facility that spans them, you do a lot of damage to international trade by having selective policy. So each country is obviously going to choose their own policy, but understanding how it impacts the other and trying to minimize the overall impact of that is a really hard challenge when the country's facing something the world's facing something it's never seen before. I do think it's gotten a lot a lot better. It was at the beginning of the outbreak that this really we had this problem. Since then, we've seen a sort of return to normality in many ways. And trucking and freight, people still need all their goods, and the return to volumes are all there, as you're aware.
Yeah, it's certainly a very strong market right now. When you take a look at your supply chain and maybe other supply chains in the auto sector, specifically for suppliers selling to the manufacturers or the OEMs, what's the most challenging part? In a normal environment, maybe an environment like this, that most companies face right now.
I think the challenging is timing. When is what sort of normality is coming back? You know, Different industries have been hit in such different ways by COVID that trying to forecast where the world's going to be in 3 months, where the vaccine rollout's going to be, what that's going to do to demand in all sorts of industries, it just becomes a guessing game, and that is hard when you're talking about a building supply chain with fixed costs and infrastructure and partnerships and forecasting out, making sure that you're prepared for different scenarios. So it's created a lot of work, and a lot of, and I think that's the hardest bit is um, how can you, if your model, if you're modeling what happened in the future, you look at the past, and we just haven't had anything like this in the past to model off. So it makes everybody's jobs much harder to predict where it's going to be. And I think we're all hopeful for a return to normality soon, but it's people are still talking about masks in 2022. So is that the way we're going? I don't know, and I don't think anybody can really tell you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think anyone can tell you where we're going to be a year from now. I know if you asked everyone a year ago, they would be dead wrong. They would be completely and utterly wrong how it's lasted. And if there are masks in 2022, I don't think I'd like it, but I wouldn't really be that surprised by it. Really, anything can happen right now. It's hard to forecast out 3, 6 months in normal times, but times like this is almost impossible. What do you think a couple of the big trends coming out of COVID will be, and basically the future of the automotive supply chain and trucking in general?
Well, I think the way business has always been done will change, right? I think that we do a lot more stuff virtually, and we do a lot more engagement with our supply chain virtually, whether that's factory inspections over like video calls, whether that's sending out more RFPs to more people that we would have otherwise required an in-site visit for. I think that it makes things in some ways faster, but I also find the personal touch is so important in supply chain because you've got to trust your partners and build something together. And I think that's missing, and I think we're going to yearn for that. I think that the work from home, Zoom meeting, it's not just for the fatigue; it's the lack of relationships that are built in that. And I for one, love to get into a room with a team or a person and be around a whiteboard and solve a problem together. And I think that need for humans to solve problems together will always be there. So I guess what will be different in supply chain. I think you'll see a lot more top of the funnel searching through Zoom meetings and a lot more initial sorting of suppliers or ideas for management. But then I don't think you'll ever replace the in-person time you need with your suppliers to jointly understand what you're doing together and build something. So for us, we're wondering, are we a virtual company going forward? We're always been based across the U.S. and you know and I think the answer is that we'll certainly be more virtual, but not fully.
Yeah, that is one of the things. Whenever we had this room, where I'm in the studio right now, we had this room full of 120 people, and now there might be 10 people in here, and we have two or three sets in this room. We used to come in every day, and it was like almost like osmosis, right? You're around so many people who had infinite knowledge in freight and logistics and the supply chain, and you just absorbed. You absorbed all the energy and all the thoughts and ideas, and it's much harder to do with Zoom and video conferences and working remotely. But there are some advantages to it. I think, like yourself, probably a hybrid model to do that. But there's a lot of times, especially when you have complex products like truck wings, you kind of have to sit down in a room with people in some cases and work through those issues and those problems and those challenges.
There's a great book which describes the birth of sort of this Renaissance period where it was the coffee shop, where like coffee shops appeared, and then people started going to them and socializing with a broader group of people. Ideas were mixed faster, so there was a Darwinism of good ideas and bad ideas being discussed in coffee shops, and then the Renaissance happened out of basically sort of chance meetings. And I think that's how humans work. I don't think that we're the serendipity of meeting somebody and them knowing somebody is just doesn't happen over Zoom. And I think I think that you'll see slower innovation and without that period and things like this conference. I can't wait for you back in person rather than over Zoom.
Same
So
here,
this is
right? I mean,
a great second place, right? Like you're doing a great
yeah.
job recreating as much as you can here.
Yeah, I think we all miss that human interaction, and as you said, the coffee shops in the Renaissance, and that great diffusion of ideas. And it's not impossible. You see that with technology replacing a lot of human interaction and being that vehicle for the diffusion of ideas. But it's still tough when you're not all in a room together and learning from each other. But thank you very much for joining us today, Daniel. How does our audience and our conference attendees here reach out, learn more about TruckLabs, Truck Wings, and yourself?
Yeah, we are available online at trucklabs.com, and we're also on Twitter under the same handle. So reach out to us there, and we look forward to continuing the conversation there.
Again, thank you, Daniel, for joining us, and stay tuned for the next fireside chat here on Automotive Day at Global Supply Chain Week.